Hello, and thanks for joining Pam and I for the new view, Safety Professionals as Change Agents. I'm Jessica Richardson. I'm the Senior Manager of Professional and Organizational Advancement with the Board of Certified Safety Professionals, and I've been a safety professional for about 15 years. Most of my experience is in construction and utility industries, but I've also worked as a professor and in the software startup markets. So I've had some cool experiences. I'm very excited today to be working with Pam Woloski on the new view, taking you guys from theory to practice, hopefully, so you have some skills and tools to help you on your journey. Pam?
Thanks, Jessica. Hi, everybody. I'm Pam Woloski, and I'm a certified safety professional. I'm currently a senior program director with Specialty Technical Consultants. We're a small niche consulting firm. Been around for 20 years. We do a lot of auditing, safety management systems development, as well as sort of general safety consulting skills. I'm also in my third year of a 3-year term as an at-large member of your ASSP. I'll end my term at the end of June in 2021. It's been a challenging time to be on the board, but I want to just assure you that we're working very closely together with the staff to continue to moderate and change and look at how ASSP serves you as a member. Our goal for today is to approach the idea of a new view from 2 different angles. I'll do the first angle, and then Jessica will handle the second angle. So as a change agent, what I'll be talking about is your responsibility as an individual within your organization, as a leader within your organization, regardless of where you fall in the hierarchy, whether you're at the top or at the bottom, you do have a role as a safety leader. And thinking about you and what you think about workers and how that thinking might address how you influence them is what I'm going to be covering. And then Jessica will pick up on the other end of the spectrum, which is looking at your organization and trying to think about how it functions, the systems within the organization that help you lead change from an organizational perspective. So I'm going to start with a series of 6 or 7 true or false questions. And these don't have right or wrong answers. They're just a way that I'd like you to begin to think about your view of safety and your view of the workers that you engage with in your daily job. So I'll put each one of these up for just a few seconds. I'm not really looking for a deep philosophical dive into them. Just read it and kind of think to yourself, what's your knee-jerk response to that? So the first one is being a good safety manager is about controlling whether workers make mistakes. The second one, I'm sorry, I've got some animations in there. Workers will speak up to stop an unsafe act if it's in their best interest to do so. At the bottom of each one of these, you'll see an attribution to who either said this or where this concept comes from. Workers don't cause failures. They trigger latent conditions that lie dormant, waiting for the right moment and the correct alignment. It's not who failed, it's what failed. Saying an event was caused by error or not following a procedure is like saying an object fell due to gravity. It's always true, it just doesn't tell us anything. And then last but not least, safety is not the absence of accidents, it's the presence of capacity within your organization. So those quotes are all meaningful to me, and those statements are all meaningful to me because as I've worked over the years as a safety professional, some 26 years now, I've really moderated in the past 5 or 6 years the way I look at the workers in the organizations that I'm engaged with and how I think about them and their behaviors and their motivations and their attitudes. And my goal here is to get you to think about how you view workers and perhaps to appreciate some problematic situations that you may be creating due to your view. So when I think about those first 2 bullet points that I see there, I think to myself, I hear this regularly. People call workers stupid or idiots or say they don't have any common sense, or they say that people don't care about what happens and they deliberately violate procedures. And I don't believe that anymore. I really have learned to appreciate the quote at the bottom of the slide, which is something Todd Conklin says, "Stop seeing workers as problems to be fixed rather than as solutions to be harnessed." And I think that's really the beginning of how do you view workers. So maybe you've heard someone call someone stupid, or maybe you think you know someone who thinks that they violate procedures, or maybe you think that. And if that's the case, I would encourage you to sort of sit back with those ideas for a few moments and think about how they may be impacting your engagement with workers and the kinds of things that you do on a day-to-day basis as a safety leader in your organization, as a change agent in your organization. I believe, I've come to believe, I didn't always believe this, that worker behavior is almost always an adaptation. It is an adaptation to the conditions, to the circumstances, to the processes, to what's happening at any given moment. And they adapt in ways that may not make sense to me as I look at that behavior and that action and those activities. But when I see that, as opposed to condemning it or judging it, my view now is to wonder why. If it doesn't make sense to me, I want to know why. I want to also appreciate that when I see behavior that doesn't make sense to me, that it's been done before, that it's most likely not the first time that a worker has behaved in a certain way or approached a task in a certain way. It's been done before by them or by others, and it probably will be continuing to be done on an ongoing basis. So that's kind of the framework that I begin now to approach workers, rather than with the idea that their deviation is purposeful or problematic. So I think about deviation from procedures as occurring from a lack of understanding, or perhaps organizational lack of enforcement. I don't ever think it's a lack of caring about getting hurt or not getting hurt for that worker or their coworkers. It may be a lack of caring about a particular process or a particular procedure, but I don't view that necessarily in a negative light. I want to understand why the worker doesn't appreciate the importance of performing a task or an activity in a certain way. Because if they're not doing it, then I want to appreciate their reasons. And again, I go back to Todd Conklin, who says to us, mistakes do not equal violations. But the old view that I used to have, and I see in many of my colleagues, is that if a worker makes a mistake, if there's an error or if there's an incident, I'm looking for who violated what process or who violated what procedure as a way to try to figure out what went wrong. This is really, really critical as I begin to think about how I responded in the past to processes and procedures and incidents, which was, if something happens, then the solution to that is to put together another policy or to fix the procedure and to roll that back out again, or to train people to try to force compliance. Policies and procedures, I would wordsmith for hours about a particular procedure to make sure I had it just right, thinking that if I had it just right, that the workers would follow it. But I've come to believe that policies don't change behavior. What changes behavior is engagement with workers that is based upon meaningful conversations that appreciate their perspective, that their responsibilities, and that their view as the person who is, as we often say, at the sharp end of the spear, who is putting themselves at risk by doing a task that may be exposing them to hazards. So the question then becomes, how do I go from the first bullet point, a view of policies and procedures are going to fix everything, to meaningful conversations? So here's some things that have helped me over the years, and I introduce them to you as a way to begin, again, to get you to think a little bit about how you view safety, how you view your role. And I'm going to talk about two different movements and then show you a little bit how they apply. You may be familiar with this, safety differently. You may have heard about this. Maybe you've spent some time understanding it. I've given you a sort of a paraphrase from Cindy Decker, who many of us are familiar with. There are a lot of other people who are engaged in this safety differently, or safety 1 versus safety 2 movement. But at its core, it challenges how you view the role of people, which I think is some of the concepts and ideas that I've been sharing up to this point. We rely on them, their expertise, their insights, their knowledge, and the dignity of the work that they perform for our organization, the value of what they bring to our organization. So this is one way of viewing the work, the worker. Another one that's quite popular out there right now is something called HOP, or Human and Organizational Performance. And there's a lot of good resources out there where you can learn more about HOP and Human and Organizational Performance. There's a website there at the bottom of your slide. Andrea Baker, Todd Conklin, a number of other people really have begun to do a lot of work in this sort of movement, if you will. And the principles of HOP are stated there on the slide. And again, you see the idea that people make mistakes, but blaming them isn't going to address the situation, that mistakes and errors are normal, and how we react to those errors and mistakes is important. Learning from mistakes is important, not punishing mistakes. So again, you see the shift from the worker as a problem to be solved, as opposed to a resource to be harnessed. And again, that's that shift that I've made over the years and that I'm sort of talking about here. So what would that look like in an organization if I had a procedure violation and I came at it from a safety differently or a HOP perspective? Well, first of all, I would view it as an error, and I would view it not necessarily as a purposeful mistake, but that there was something in the system that created the circumstances that led to that violation. That would be my first thought when I saw a procedure violation. And Jessica's going to address some of those systems issues when she picks up at the second part of our discussion. So the first bullet point talks about this concept of a fundamental attribution error, which is a big part of procedure violations and how I view them. So, and I've been so guilty of this over the years in my profession, and it's been a hard challenge for me to shift the way I think about these things. When I look at someone else's behavior, I see their behavior as flawed, but yet under the same circumstances, I would probably do the same thing. So think about it like this. Somebody is late to class. It's because they're lazy. It's because they can't organize their life. It's because they slept in. If I'm late to class, it's because there was traffic. It's because my car wouldn't start. It's because there was something that happened that was out of my control. So that's the attribution error, and that's the difference, and that's the shift that I think we have to make to recognize those errors that we may do and to find a way to shift our thinking away from them. Rosa Carrillo talks about drift from procedure is a positive adaptation on the part of our workers. She's written an excellent book, and I highly recommend it to you if you haven't read it, called The Relationship Factor in Safety Leadership. And a lot of the concepts that we're talking about here are part of that particular book. So sometimes when somebody doesn't follow the procedure and finds a new and innovative way to do something, we celebrate that. Perhaps it saves us money. Perhaps it's a more efficient way of doing a particular task, but it's not following the procedure. So why is it that sometimes we celebrate those drifts from procedure and other times we want to punish those drifts from procedure? So when we see somebody who doesn't follow a procedure, again, the question I always ask in my mind is, why did they do that? Sort of a questioning attitude, not a why did they do that? Again, you know, what do I have to do to get folks to follow these procedures versus something is being differently appreciated in the workplace and workers are behaving different than the procedure that's written. I need to know why. I need to understand that. And that's where the conversation comes in between myself and the worker. So if I have a failure, an incident, whether it's a near hit, whether it's an actual injury or an illness or property damage, how do I look at that now versus how I might have looked at that in the future? Todd Conklin talks about severe incidents and fatalities as abnormalities in our system. They get a lot of attention. They're very detrimental. They're very serious. They cause a lot of concern and anxiety and frustration in our parts, but they really are abnormal. They aren't the typical ways that our organization behaves. And so when we look at incidents, the goal is to look at how many times the process or the procedure occurred without an incident, and to find out the difference between what happened when there was an incident and when there wasn't, but to focus more of our energy and attention on building up and supplanting and building resilience, into those systems to reduce those errors. And so people talk about the idea of work, normal work, and work when things go right. Safety Differently also talks about the idea of work as imagined. That's the procedure, as opposed to work as done. And that's the way it's actually occurring. And our focus needs to be on work as done and understanding that and those variations in work as done and what causes those variations to lead to a potential incident so that we can address those. So again, if I look at workers from a different framework using HOP and Safety Differently and some of those other concepts, it leads me down to the idea that Rosa Carrillo supports, is the idea that the relationship between me and the worker is the key. And going back to one of those questions from the very beginning, if I believe workers will speak up when they believe it's in their best interest to do so, first of all, why don't they? And secondly, what will it take to get them to want to do so? I have to appreciate my role in creating an environment where maybe they don't feel like it's in their best interest to do so, as opposed to figuring out how the worker has to change to speak up. I would encourage you to think about how you might have to change, how you might need to accept responsibility for the situation and change the way you're acting, the way you're reacting, and how you engage with workers. So I believe it's on me as the leader and the safety leader. It's also on the leaders of my organization who may not be engaged in safety directly to figure out where those situations have created broken trust between myself and the worker and take the lead in fixing them. Identifying my role and my beliefs in creating those. And again, that's the journey that I was sort of reflecting on, that I might have changed the way I view things by really beginning to appreciate some other concepts and ideas about workers and work as done versus work as imagined. So what I've come to believe is that problems can be solved through successful engagement of workers. And a conversation, a meaningful conversation, is how I can change that dynamic. You may say, but wait a minute, workers aren't my friends. These relationships, these conversations, this situation you're describing is, it's a little different than these are my colleagues. These are not my buddies that I go for pizza and beer with. And that's absolutely true. Think about it as a personal work relationship as opposed to a boss-employee friendship, right? They're personal because we look at that person as an individual. We appreciate their humanity and their dignity. And in that relationship, we create belonging and inclusion, and we role model ways in which everybody should be treating each other, which creates an opportunity for everyone to begin to treat each other in the same way. So think about, what if you're having safety conversations, maybe a daily safety brief or a training session that you're leading, and you're asking questions and you're getting blank stares. Think about that conversation or think about that dialogue. And if you're not getting what you want out of it, behavior or engagement, maybe you need to ask different questions. So here, this was an important turnaround for me, is learning to appreciate that when I'm engaged in a conversation or a dialogue, I often listen with the intent to reply. I've got my answer halfway through whatever it is you're saying, and the rest of what you say goes right through my head because I already know what I'm going to say in response to you. So changing your ability to listen with the intent to understand as opposed to the intent to reply. I still do this. It's been a hard challenge. It's been a long road, but I'll tell you that being conscious of this problem and this habit has made me a better listener. So how can I then create a situation where I can engage workers and encourage them to answer my questions and then to listen to what they have to say. So I think about something called learning questions, and you may have heard this concept before. And as a tool for you, I'd like to kind of leave you with this idea of learning questions. These are some learning questions that I'll just throw out for you to consider. There are a dozen different ways in which any one of these questions can be expanded or changed or modified based upon what you do and how you engage with your workers. But again, look at these questions for the importance of really hearing what the worker has to say, as opposed to trying to tell the worker what to do. And so Andrea Baker and others that are noted down at the bottom of the screen now are really good at some of these concepts of learning questions. And if it's something that you believe you need to change, how you question and the kinds of questions you ask, those are also some resources that I would refer to you. And the last bullet, the last resource down at the bottom, I'll just take a minute to mention that the Z10 guidance manual for ANSI ASSP has a lot of really good information on learning questions. It also talks a lot about the new view of safety and system safety, and is an excellent resource for you moving forward. So before I turn this back over to Jessica, let me just kind of summarize the concepts and the ideas that I've been trying to present here. Again, the new view of you as a safety professional and what you can do to improve your ability to be a change agent within your organization is at least in part based upon you as an individual and how you think of workers and your willingness to accept or at least consider that you might be the problem or part of the problem, and that changing your perspective and your attitude and your way of engaging with workers may be the catalyst to get you to get the responses and the results and the kinds of things that you're looking for, that you feel you're not getting, the frustrations that you're having. Ensuring that you appreciate and respect the workers that you engage with, communicating that you value their humanity, asking learning questions with the intent to listen rather than to respond. And then the last piece is really, really critical, and that is the idea that if you want workers to be accountable for the outcome of the procedures and the processes that you're working with them to develop in the organization, you have to include them in the solutioning. Because if you don't, if you spend hours and hours writing the perfect procedure at your desk in the corner of your facility, then you're going to miss an opportunity to include workers in that solutioning, which will then get that accountability, that appreciation, that engagement that you're looking for. So thanks for listening to me. I'm going to turn this back over to my colleague, Jessica, and she's going to tell you a little bit more about organizational change management.
Thanks, Pam. So I really started getting into human and organizational performance when I switched from construction to the nuclear industry, because the Department of Energy and the Nuclear Powers Organization, they've been doing human performance for a long time because the consequences of failure are so great in that organization. So when I was first introduced to human performance in the nuclear field, what it did for me was opened up a world of communicating with leadership and management about solutions and not problems. So I'm really excited to talk to you about this today. These first two slides I have are questions to see if your organization is in fact ready to accomplish this, because going from a conversation about, walking into an incident, review and their leadership sitting there and saying, what's wrong with this guy, to moving forward and saying, how did we fail this person? Or where did our system not ensure their safety, right? It's a really big shift for a lot of organizations. So the questions I'd recommend you really ask is, can you go beyond compliance? Are you ready for that? Because compliance isn't going to get it when you're talking about change agents and new view. The second question is, are you going to provide competent resources? Safety professionals as change agents, I'm going to show you a lot of the tools that you could be using on a daily basis to state your case and drive solutions that really improve performance, not only for the organization, but make the day-to-day lives of the workers better. So competent resources, you need competent safety professionals. And then, are you prepared for transparency, continuous learning, and communication that empowers workers? Exactly what Pam talked about. It's not a game. They're not replaceable. These are your greatest assets. Are you going to put your money where your mouth is? So next slide. Thanks, Pam. The next question, what we're talking about is changing the way we work. We're going to plan work differently. We're going to complete work differently in the name of performance improvement. And a lot of organizations, their procedures and the way they do work are as old as their infrastructure. Consider utilities, right? They've been around since the 1800s. A lot of them are early 1900s, and the way that they've operated that valve hasn't changed. So really, we're talking about changing fundamentals. Are you willing to evaluate, disclose, and manage organizational risks? Kathy Seabrook has a lot of great information on this. She's pretty much the point of the global and also US organizational risk disclosure for expertise, as far as I'm concerned. And what she's told us and what we know is that in the United States, we're really terrible at disclosing risk because we're so focused on liability. So that is a hard thing to get over. But when you consider from a leadership or a CEO level, if people are going to invest in your organization, they need to understand those health and safety risks from a sustainability standpoint. So I'd recommend reading and learning, listening to Kathy Seabrook on organizational risks. She has really interesting views. And then the last one is, are you willing to lead by example, participating in the continuous improvement of safety performance? And when you ask that to a leader, what that means is you need to show up to every safety orientation, show your face, tell people what's important, right? You have to support the new view and making sure that the organization's not only safe, but with the workers in mind, making their day better. Next one, Pam. Thank you. So systems thinking. After I got into the nuclear field, I started my master's degree in organizational performance and workplace learning from Boise State. One of the most eye-opening experiences of my professional career so far. And a lot of these tools I learned there. So if you're looking for a master's that expands your scope beyond safety, highly recommend. When we talk about systems thinking, it's really a macro view. And if you really want to dive more into this subject, ASSP has published a fantastic collection of Fred Manuel's writings, and it's available to members on there. And he has so much good information about what exactly we're talking about here. Instead of, the command and control style of management, we're talking about what Pam was talking about, collaborative discussion. Are you talking to all the right people? Are you involving all the disciplines? And most importantly, are you understanding how your workers interact with your processes, right? It's the work is done, not the work is imagined. Do you understand it? Do you understand that if one supervisor, disregards a safety policy or procedure regularly and the employee or the worker gets caught violating that procedure, that's not on the worker. That's not how this operates, right? There was a latent error with lack of supervision. So really it's taking that focus and looking at the whole picture and seeing why things happen. So the big thing here is understanding that the system itself, we're really looking at the system as a whole, and then the parts are secondary. You also have to understand that whenever you deal with a system or you change the parts, other parts of the system are going to shift too. So it's really understanding and getting that communication feedback to make sure that you understand how these changes are affecting the workforce and the organization, and how to get that whole functioning in the right direction. Next one, Pete. So management of change is it's a hot topic. It's a really big deal. And here's some from Fred there. Our overarching role, it's indirect, but it's inevitable if you work in a safety management system. Because the reality is, in safety management systems, we make corrective actions and preventive actions. And anytime you make an intervention, like a corrective or a preventive action, no matter what it is, if you're intending to improve that performance, your workers are going to perceive it one way or another, right? And we've all seen change management go wrong in the workplace. And it's not fun for anybody, and it's especially painful for those making the changes. So when you really think about our job duties in, Z10 or ISO 45001, your job is to make changes to improve the SMS. There's no getting around it. There's no, well, the compliance is the same. Those standards are written to get you to move the organization. Next one. So InchBo, another place I'd recommend everybody check out. In 2017, they released this great document, and basically on the roles of professionals and practitioners in the international space. ASSP was a part of it, BCSP was a part of it. And what I found really interesting was when they were describing, job skills and job duties for safety professionals, they called out change management, which I was excited about. And I pulled out, 5 examples of the document to show you where you should be looking to improve. So first thing, can you define a problem? Can you analyze and understand a problem? Do you understand how it's going to affect the work? Here's one for you. How about psychology of change as it relates to individuals? You got a psych degree? Me either, but I have children, so it works out. But realistically, the psychology is coming into safety, especially with the pandemic, mental health. But additionally, ISO 45001 requires you consider psychosocial risks to your workers. So yeah, it's warm and it's squishy, and it might be really uncomfortable, but that's where you're going to get the bang for your buck. And then, just basically, innovation of your change management processes. Are they working? How can you make them better? Next one. So this is an easy tool and a super easy example to show you. Kurt Lewin was a really influential guy in force field analysis, and this is a simple way to look at how your organization responds. So back before the pandemic, this was a lot easier to understand, right? So our desired state is less travel for meetings. So what's driving that? Well, we have web conferencing ability, and we really like less commuting. And you can put values to the sides, right? Well, what are those restraining forces that are keeping people on the road? One, it's the face-to-face cultural value. Most likely, we like it, and we miss it. We miss you guys. But also resistance to tech. And I know we've all been on a lot of platforms recently, and we can understand that. So you can see in this example, our restraining forces are greater than our driving forces. So how can we even that out to make this change acceptable to the organization? Next one. So this is an eye chart, but it's an example of a force field analysis worksheet that kind of breaks it down to a behavior engineering model, which I'm going to get into a little bit shortly. But it's kind of cool because you can actually go through each of these layers of resources, incentives, what are our motives, what's our capacity, can we actually do this? And you can go in and evaluate that change and see, what areas are your weakness and where you really need to do your research and better define and analyze and provide a solution for the problem. Next one. Okay, so these change management comparison tables, they're out there. A lot are more complex. I picked a simple one so you could see it. This is just, what's your change? What is our current solution or the old solution? And what's our proposed solution? So we look at the change. First thing to consider is simplicity. Is this easier for the workers? Compatibility. Is the change drastic, or can we make it work, right? Adaptability, like Pam was talking about, can people adapt with the conditions, the facilities, what have you? Relative advantage. And if you're thinking about relative advantage for your workers, you're in a good place, right? That's pretty advanced. And more importantly is that social impact. So you think about the structure in your system of your organization and where your workers are and where you are and how they communicate. Are we turning their world upside down, right? That's a real question to ask. So how are, you have to really consider your interventions and what the consequences are before you provide a solution. Next one, Pam. So this is, every safety professional should have this printed out and put in their office. This is Gilbert's behavior engineering model. So this is fundamental to understanding human performance, and it's basic, and I'm going to show you one that's more advanced after this, which is great, but this is the bread and butter document. So he designed this with performance improvement potential in mind, and that means bang for the buck. How are we going to make the most improvements without, expanding the most energy? The real thing about the BEM is this is a needs assessment light. You have a problem, this is how you're going to start a needs assessment, right? So first thing to consider is the environment. You're going to look at the data, the information. Is there feedback? Where's the performance guidelines? You're going to look at instrumentation, tools, resources. My favorite squares over here is the motivation, right? I mean, are people motivated to do this or not? Are there clear consequences for poor performance or great performance, right? And then it asks you to look at the individual level, which is really important to consider, right? So at the individual level, our information is knowledge. So think about this. How many times have you had a safety issue at your organization and the prescribed intervention was safety training? What you're telling me is the only issue with that problem is that people didn't have the skills or knowledge to do the job, and that's usually not the case. If you look at this, check out capacity, flexible scheduling, job aids, adaptation, selection, and then motives, right? So are you matching the right people to the right situation and how this organization runs? So really, if you're blaming the worker, you're not looking, is what the BEM tells me. Next one, Pam. So at Boise State, Dr. Anthony Marker basically took Gilbert's BEM levels and expanded on it. Dr. Marker's awesome. There's a lot of great webinars on there from him. And what's kind of cool about what he did is he takes a look at like consequences, rewards, resources, just like the BEM. But then this is more of a strategic model in my view set. Because really what we're looking to is outside the organization and inside the organization, right? So as with safety management systems, contractor safety is, that's a big deal right now, right? Your vendors, your stakeholders. So if you really think about the context of work, the workers are a very small part of it. And, in fact, I think about how many decisions have to be made by management before the worker touches their hand to the tools. Okay, so when you look externally, do we feedback? You look at the organizational level, right? Same thing. And then you look at the task, the job level, and then the individual level. So Marker really breaks this down, and I think really because there's external influence, this is probably a better document for guiding you. But as an introduction, I'd start with the BEM and then move to the SAM. Next one. So this is the 4 motivational switches. This comes from Haig and Addison, 2012. It was in the Journal of Performance Improvement. And I love this because it's so simple, but it's revolutionary. It's the questions Pam's talking about. If your workers say no to these questions, they're not going to do it. They're not going to do whatever you're asking. 1, do I understand what's being asked? The BEM relationship there is data, right? So they're not going to do it, right? Can I do it? Are they able to be successful? That's capacity, that's knowledge. So, there's uses over there to kind of help you make that work. Will I be allowed? Am I permitted to do this? So do I have the support, the resources, the tools? And in the BEM, you're looking at the instrument level. And then the last one is, do I feel like it? Is there worth in this? Compared to my other competing priorities, is this going to get done? So you're looking at incentives and motives. So that's a great example there. Next one. Change management project plans are, really big. And the big thing on change management is communication. How can you get the word out and get people familiarized and comfortable? So there's a lot of information on the slide, big things, leadership, The big thing I would recommend for everyone is to identify those leaders in your organization that don't have the titles, but sway the opinions. Those people are going to be your biggest asset, your biggest supporters if you can get them on board early with your change, and they will make assimilation of the change so much easier. Remember, leadership isn't a title. It's who gets the work done, who leads, who makes the decisions. So if you get those decision makers on board, you'll be in a good spot. Next one. So leadership's the name of the game. I keep going back to it. It's kind of interesting, but the big deal is improved communication. The safety management system standards, Z10 and 45001, require a ton of leadership, communication, and participation. And they're gonna, those standards are gonna ask, you're gonna ask the workers from a leadership perspective how they want to be communicated with. Talk about flipping something on its head, right? So when you really think about how you live as a leader in your work organization, the biggest thing that's made a difference to me on the job, and this really came about in nuclear, was encouraging and being committed to all your workers having a questioning attitude. If you come into my meeting without a questioning attitude, I'm going to send you home because I'm going to think there's a fatigue issue, right? There's got to be a challenge, there's got to be respect, and that's how you really move an organization forward. Next one. So these, you can look into detail. I'm not going to read slides to you. These come from the Department of Energy's Human Performance Improvement Handbooks, DOE. I think they were released in 2006. They're out there on the internet. There's methods for management. And then the next slide, I think, is individual, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it. But this isn't new. This is INPO, airline industry, hospitals. And really, the big things here, there's a lot of activities that correlate, and some of them are behavior-based safety in nature, right? So the thing about when you pick methods, whether it's for management, individuals, what have you, number one, it has to meet your organizational maturity. And number two, I don't think you can do them all well. So you better pick one or two. And the one I picked is the one I highlighted. It's the corrective action program. That's where you're going to find out what's working, what's not, because that corrective action program to me is the best indicator of organizational safety out there, because I know what's being reported, I know how it's being fixed, and I also have people actively participating. Next one. So individuals, same thing, DOE, INPO, task review, questioning attitude, stop when you're unsure, right? Does everyone know the phonetic alphabet? So we're not working on generator alpha instead of generator bravo, right? So these are all available, and we could do a whole webinar on these methods themselves. Next one, Pam. And then work teams. So a lot of this learning is happening in teams, and I think that's one of the intents of the new view and change agents is safety professionals can't do it alone. Your pre-job briefings, flagging, turnover, decision-making, vendor oversight, there's so many ways you can, influence work teams from a HOP or a new view perspective. But the biggest thing is simplicity and making sure that you're actively listening. Next one. All right, so intervention alignment's a big deal. You might think you have the best plan to fix a solution in the world, but you don't unless you consider these 5 things. Okay, number one, is it appropriate, right? Does it fit your organization? Does it make sense, right? This is logic. 2 usually is cost. Can we actually resource this? Then is it feasible, right? I mean, whether you're fixing a one-time fall prevention solution or you're looking at training for an organization with 40,000 people, right? We have to understand what feasible means to the organization. And so that's why sometimes it's really important for you to have subject matter experts, especially when you're working with consultants in place that actually know the organization. Organizational acceptance and worker acceptance. And we know we can get to those places through change management tools, wonderful conversations, actively listening and really caring about other humans. So it's, to me, the intervention alignment is getting that buy-in, right, from leadership, and that really kicks off everything, and you can make your case for being a change agent and improving performance. Next one. All right. If you have any questions, here's Pam and I's emails. We're happy to answer them and speak with you. So right now we're going to throw it back to our friends at ASSP, and thank you very much.
Thanks, Jessica. Just a reminder, just to echo the point Jessica made at the beginning about filling out the evaluations. We love to hear that information. ASSP needs to hear that information. So again, our goal today was to give you a new view of safety, looking at yourself as an individual safety professional and how you engage with workers, as well as looking within your organization to develop systems and processes and models for change management within your organization. Those two pieces have to be put together. But again, thank you for being with both of us today. We appreciate your time and attention.